Welcome to Le Podcast de Philippe. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into mesh networks.
Oh, go ahead.
You've shared a few articles on this topic, and it seems like you're trying to figure out if this is something that you might want to set up at home.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to unpack what mesh networks are, how they differ from traditional routers and extenders, and what the benefits and drawbacks are.
Sounds good.
We're also aiming to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube today.
Wow.
So if you enjoy this deep dive, please consider hitting that subscribe button.
Absolutely.
All right, so mesh networks,
Yeah.
they're becoming increasingly popular, and a lot of people are demanding more from their home Wi-Fi.
Right.
So what are they?
So the basic idea with a mesh network is that you're creating one unified network using a bunch of different nodes that are all interconnected.
Okay, so this isn't just like those old extenders where you're just boosting the signal from your existing router.
Exactly. Unlike extenders, which basically just amplify a weakening signal, mesh networks create a new, much more robust network. Each node in a mesh system, and this includes the main router and then the satellite nodes that you place around your house, they can all communicate with each other and with your devices.
So it's intelligently routing the data through the network and always taking the most efficient path.
Precisely. It's like having multiple paths to a destination, and the network will choose the clearest, fastest route for that data to travel.
That sounds pretty promising, especially for larger homes or maybe places with thick walls and stuff where you tend to have that Wi-Fi signal struggle.
Absolutely. One of the key benefits of mesh networks is that they're able to provide this extended and uniform coverage, meaning you virtually eliminate dead zones.
Nice.
They also offer overall improved performance, so faster speeds and more consistent signal quality throughout your entire home.
So no more buffering videos just because I am the room furthest away from the router.
In theory, yes, but there are some nuances to that we can maybe get into a little bit later. Another significant advantage is seamless roaming. So as you move throughout your house, your device will automatically connect to the strongest signal without any interruption.
That's huge, especially if you're working from home or doing a lot of video calls and you need that consistent connection.
Yeah, for sure.
I've definitely had those frustrating moments where the signal drops right as I'm about to say something important.
Right. It can be incredibly disruptive.
For sure.
Now, while mesh networks offer a lot of advantages, it's also really important to understand the potential downsides.
Okay, yeah, nothing's perfect.
Right.
Right? So what are some of the trade-offs that we should be aware of?
One of the main things to consider is cost. Mesh systems typically require you to buy multiple nodes, which makes them more expensive than a traditional router or just a simple extender setup.
Okay.
You can probably expect to pay anywhere from around 100 euros for a basic two-node system to over 1,000 euros for those high-end systems that'll cover really large areas and offer more advanced features.
So it's really important to kind of assess your needs and maybe your budget before jumping into this mesh network solution.
Yeah.
What other disadvantages are there that we should be thinking about?
So one thing with mesh systems, while they're designed to be super stable and reliable, there's a potential for increased latency in some cases.
All right.
Because the data might be hopping between nodes to find like that most efficient path.
Right.
It could introduce like slight delays.
So is that something that you actually notice in everyday use? Like, would it affect something like online gaming or video calls?
It really depends on the specific mesh system that you have and your internet connection speed.
Okay.
In most cases, the latency is pretty minimal, and it's probably not going to be noticeable for like general web browsing or streaming.
Okay.
However, for activities that require extremely low latency, like you mentioned, competitive online gaming,
Yeah.
you might notice a slight difference.
Okay. So you mentioned security in your research notes as being something you were kind of concerned about.
Right.
Is that something that we should dive into?
Absolutely. Security is so crucial for any home network.
Yeah.
The good news is that most reputable mesh systems actually come with some pretty great built-in security features.
Oh.
Like you have firewalls, WPA2 encryption,
Okay.
and a lot of them also offer additional features like guest networks and parental controls.
So it sounds like they can be just as secure, if not maybe even more so than traditional routers.
Yeah, that's right. It's important to make sure you keep your mesh system's firmware updated, though,
Okay.
to make sure you have the latest security patches.
Right. Makes sense. So, one of the articles that you shared was talking about mesh networks and how they actually differ from those Wi-Fi extenders that I think we've all tried at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely had my fair share of frustration with those things. They promise a lot, but they don't always deliver.
Well, they basically just amplify the Wi-Fi signal from your router,
Right.
which can lead to reduced speeds and connection issues because they're creating like a bottleneck by sharing the same bandwidth.
Right.
Whereas mesh networks create a whole new unified network, ensuring that you're getting seamless connectivity and optimal performance across all of those nodes.
And it's so interesting how extenders are marketed as the solution for dead zones, even though there are all those drawbacks.
Well, it's partly due to the price difference. Extenders are definitely a cheaper option,
Right.
but you often end up sacrificing performance and reliability. A mesh network is a much more comprehensive solution.
So if someone was thinking about maybe getting a mesh system, what are some key factors that they should be keeping in mind?
So first, you want to think about the size of your home
Okay.
and the number of devices that you typically have connected at the same time.
Right.
So if you've got like a large home with multiple floors or thick walls, you're gonna need a mesh system that has enough nodes to cover that entire space.
And if you're a heavy internet user with multiple devices all streaming and gaming at the same time, you'd want something that could handle that load without compromising performance.
Precisely. You also want to consider the features offered by different mesh systems. Okay.
Some of them offer like built-in antivirus protection. Parental controls the ability to prioritize traffic for certain devices or certain activities.
That's a lot to think about.
There is. Doing a little research, reading reviews, and comparing different brands and models can really help.
That's great advice. You mentioned earlier that mesh networks might be particularly well suited for smart homes.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. One of the challenges with smart home devices is making sure that they have like a really reliable and consistent internet connection.
Yeah.
And because mesh networks are so good at providing strong, seamless coverage throughout a home,
Right.
they're kind of ideal for that.
So a really robust mesh network could be the backbone of a truly interconnected smart home experience.
Exactly. And as we keep adding more and more smart devices to our homes, I think mesh networks are only going to become more essential for managing all those connections,
Yeah.
making sure everything runs smoothly.
This has been really helpful. I feel like you've given us such a comprehensive overview of mesh networks. Glad to hear it.
From like all the technical details to actually like the practical things that people need to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like mesh networks are becoming less of a luxury and more of a necessity for modern living.
I think so too. With our increasing reliance on things like streaming, video conferencing, smart home technology,
Right.
a really reliable Wi-Fi network just isn't optional anymore. It's kind of essential.
So for anyone listening who's maybe intrigued by this idea of mesh networks, but they're still not sure if it's right for them,
Yeah.
what would you say are like the key takeaways from our deep dive?
Well, the first thing I would say is to really honestly assess your current Wi-Fi situation.
Okay.
Like, are you having problems with dead zones or slow speeds, or are you getting disconnected a lot?
Right.
If you are, then a mesh network could be a really good investment.
And even if you're not facing like those major issues right now, but you're thinking, okay, in the future, I'm probably going to be using the internet more. Maybe we'll have more smart home devices or people working from home.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense to think about it proactively.
Exactly. It's about future-proofing your home network and making sure it can handle, all these demands that we keep putting on it.
And we talked a lot about the benefits, but it's also important to think about the potential downsides too. Like we talked about the cost being higher than traditional routers or those extenders.
Right. Mesh systems can be a bit of an investment, so you really want to factor that into your decision.
Yeah.
And also, while they're generally pretty easy to set up, some mesh networks might require a little bit more technical know-how, especially if you want to configure some of those more advanced features.
So doing your research, reading some reviews, comparing different brands and models,
Exactly.
that can really save you a lot of headaches later on.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Like, reach out to a friend who's a little more tech savvy, or even a professional installer if you need to.
I think we've covered just about everything on mesh networks.
Yeah, I think so.
We explored how they work, what the advantages and disadvantages are, and even how they fit into this bigger picture of smart homes and like the future of internet connectivity.
I hope this deep dive has helped answer some questions for people.
Me too. As always, we encourage you to keep exploring this topic, and there's a ton of information online. We'll include some helpful links in the show notes.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and please subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe on YouTube. We're so close to hitting our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support really means a lot to us.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of mesh networks. Until next time, stay curious.